It is with great pleasure, as you know, that I introduce our main speaker tonight. It's Polly P. from Cypress, California.
Hi, everybody. My name is Polly, and I'm an alcoholic. By God's grace, in a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, I haven't had a drink since April the 11th of 1977, and for that, I am eternally grateful. So God willing and the creek don't rise, I'll have 23 years of sobriety on Tuesday. And that's, I tell you, that's a big deal. That is a big deal. I just meeting some people in this room tonight that I haven't seen in a long time, and it's like, gosh, the years go by. The years go by, and if you just don't drink and you don't die, you get to stay around here for a little while. Is it okay if I pull this down just a little bit? Yeah, so I can see you guys good. I have a home group, and my home group is Monday night Seal Beach Speakers Meeting, and I have a sponsor, and her name is Dottie H. And those are the things that I need to be a member in good standing in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I totally believe what Susie said about, those are the things that I need. I need a sobriety date. I got sober in Texas. And in Texas, I don't care if you're sitting in a discussion group or whatever it is, you always give your name and sobriety date. And the reason is that in Texas, they say if you don't have a sobriety, if you don't have a sobriety date, maybe you're not sober. So if you need a sobriety date. And you need a home group. I need a place where I can call home. I don't ever think about what I'm going to do on Monday night. I don't ever think about that. On Monday night, I'm going to be at Seal Beach Speakers Meeting because that's what I'm going to do. That's my commitment. That's my home group, and I don't even think about it. And I need an AA sponsor because I can assure you, at 23 years of sobriety, I am far, far, far from well. I need a sponsor. And I also am not too proud that I don't talk about the things that are going on with me with the women I sponsor. I think that it's really important to say, look, I struggle with life just as much as you struggle with life. Just because I'm 23 years sober doesn't mean I have the answers. What it does mean is that I have picked up the tools of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, the steps, the traditions, and the concepts, and I have used these tools in my life to stay sober one day at a time. I never, ever could live life on life's terms until I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't want to do life. I have never wanted to be responsible for myself. And I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you told me that I had to be responsible and accountable for my actions, past and present. And today, I stand accountable. And it's really a whole lot easier to tell on yourself because the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and our other big book says, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Now, it's apt to piss you off first, but it will set you free. And I'm a firm believer in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm not a real big 12 and 12 reader. But there is something in the 12 and 12 that I truly love, and it's in step 10. And it says, it is a spiritual axiom, when anything disturbs me, no matter what the cause, there's something wrong with me. And that's what I learned again tonight. Susie and I had a little discussion of some stuff that was going on with me, and one more time I found out that it's me that's a problem. It's nobody else. And those are the things that I've learned in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. If it bothers me, it's about me. It has nothing to do with people, places, or things. It's all about what's going on with me. And today I'm grateful I know that. But the deal is that I have to be reminded of that. I don't know if you guys can just always remember that, but I have a hard time with that. Sometimes it has to be pointed out to me one more time. Polly, this is just, it's your ego. It's what's going on with you that's the problem. So take a look at that. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I know that today. I'm a person who comes from a really good family. Now, I'm not going to say that there wasn't any problems there, because there were. But I want you to know that I am living, breathing proof that you can come to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and not come from alcoholic parents. I do not come from the disease of alcoholism. And it's probably the perfect thing for me, because if I had come from the disease of alcoholism, I'm sure that I'd be a dead alcoholic, because it certainly would have never been my fault. It would have been their fault. And fortunately, I have had no one to blame for my alcoholism. I finished reading a book about Clarence Snyder's life called How It Worked. And the author of this book says there appears to be two characteristics that seem to make people an alcoholic. And that characteristic is either you're loved too much or not enough. And if that's the case, I'm one of these people that was loved too much. I'm sure if I'd have went to my daddy and said, Daddy, I want that big yellow moon, my daddy would have found a way to give that to me. And I'm really grateful today that I know that my parents truly loved me. But you see, I have a disease called alcoholism. And when I ended up in treatment, I became aware that I had had a really good life, and that there were people in there that had had some horrific things happen to them, and things that happened to little girls and little boys that should never have happened to little kids. And I sat there and I said, well, gosh, I can understand why she's an alcoholic, or I can understand why he's an alcoholic, but why am I an alcoholic? And I didn't understand because none of those things had happened to me. And today I understand. You see, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous has given me my answers. Today I know that I am suffering from a disease that's spiritual in nature. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells me that I am suffering from a spiritual malady. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells me that I am separated from the sunshine of the Spirit. The Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that nothing is enough for an alcoholic like me. You cannot love me enough, you cannot give me enough, you cannot do enough. There isn't enough for an alcoholic like me. So I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous believing that nobody loved me. Yet, I was so loved, but I couldn't feel that love. And it's only been through the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that I have been able to begin to feel the love of other people, because I was so spiritually dead when I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I had been raised in a church. I was raised Southern Baptist, so I was told about God. I knew about God. Somehow or another, my perception of this God was so distorted. I don't know if you guys sell a bunch of tapes around here of other people, but Clancy has a tape out, and it's called Alcoholism, a Disease of Perception. And I highly encourage anybody to get that tape. Because what I have found out about me is that my perception of reality is distorted. I just don't see things the way they really are. I need to talk things over with people who I respect in my life, and I have a lot of respect for Susie. I may sponsor her, but she has a lot of sobriety. And when I have something I want to discuss, I do. And the deal is that it can totally alter my perception of a situation. My perception of reality is distorted. I don't want it to be that way, but it is. So what I have found out is that, God has never sent me a fax, but he sent me one of you. And if I will talk over it with you, I will get the answers. And God, as I understand him today, expresses himself to me through the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And God has given me the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. He's given me the 12 and 12. He's given us the AA program. This is the things that I found, the tools in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm so grateful today because the answers have been there. You see, I was always looking for God somewhere up in the sky. And I found out in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous that God is deep within. And the Big Book tells me how to find God. It says, search fearlessly. I also have a higher power that's got a dynamite sense of humor. And I want to share that with you. Now, I don't know if any of you guys are sensitive. I'm probably the only one. My name is Polly. I am not a Pauline or a Paula. I am Polly. And if your name is Polly, you're going to be teased a lot. And when I was a little girl, it was things like Polly wants a cracker and Polly Wally Doodle all the day. And I'm sensitive. I don't like for people to laugh at me and tease me. But what I've learned in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous is there's no negatives in God's world. It's just my perception that's negative. Everything has a positive end. Everything, every result is positive. It's just my perception that's negative. I didn't know that I was an alcoholic, but I knew that I was a drunk, and I knew that I was a lush. And I used to drive down the freeways in Dallas, Texas, and I used to pray to God to have heart disease or cancer or something, because I knew I was dying, and I just wanted to die of something respectable. And today I know that the disease of alcoholism is my greatest gift, because if it weren't for the disease of alcoholism, I wouldn't qualify for the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And everything I am or hope to be, I owe to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Almost 20 years ago, I married another member of this fellowship. And his last name is, my name is now Polly. Now, I think God's got a great sense of humor, because I tell you, you cannot walk on planet Earth with a name like Polly Pistol and not learn to lighten up. So, God's got a great sense of humor. I just want to quickly get through this this drunkalog stuff. It's not going to be very long, so because I want to talk about recovery, and I've had a fabulous week, and I want to talk to you about that and share with you, because one of the things that I want to tell you is that I believe that the disease of alcoholism is a family disease, and that anybody who has a disease of alcoholism affects the people that live with them. And if it's children, it is absolutely traumatizes children. What the disease of alcoholism does to children is so traumatizing that some people, unless they have a way out, which is what I love that our AA book was going to be named The Way Out, because I believe the way out is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, Al-Anon, and Alateen, to treat the disease of alcoholism, whether you are infected with it or affected with it. And I really want to talk a lot about family recovery, because I believe in family recovery. And I believe that it is my responsibility as a recovering alcoholic, as a recovering alcoholic mother, to make restitution to my children that I harmed so much as an alcoholic parent. And I want to talk about that. But in the meantime, let me tell you, at 18 years old, I married an Air Force officer, and I thought I had found my knight in shining armor, and we were going to sail off into the sunset and live happily ever after. And I had married a SAC pilot, and this man was going to be gone, and he was going to be gone for years at a time, and I was going to have to learn to be responsible for myself, and I have never, ever wanted to do that. And I'm here to tell you, I still don't want to do it. But the program of Alcoholics Anonymous tells me I have to be responsible and accountable, and Dave doesn't want to be responsible for me either. So I have to learn to be responsible for myself, and I'm grateful today that you've taught me how to do that. But I had married this Air Force officer. I'm 18 years old, and one of the problems that I've carried throughout my life is I've always thought I'm stupid. And here I marry so young, I go into the Air Force, and I am so humiliated, so intimidated, and feel so inadequate with all these women, because my perception of these other officers' wives are they are very educated, they know all the right answers, they know how to dress, they know how to have the right parties, and as soon as I am this little second lieutenant's wife, and we go to a meeting, and it's a lot like this, and a lady's standing up, and she's the base commander, and she's going to tell all of us how to be a proper second lieutenant's wife. And I am devastated. I'm thinking, there is no way I can do this. I am too stupid. If I open my mouth, they'll know that how stupid I am. And I was uneducated then. I'm still uneducated, so I guess it didn't really matter to me that much, or I would have gone and done something about it. But I just felt so intimidated, and I felt so less than, and that's the feeling I've always had. Yet, I was told how much I was loved. Now what I have learned today is what the book talks about. You can't give what you don't have. And you see, my parents have both been very abused, and they tried really hard to give me a lot of self-worth and a lot of feelings of having self-esteem, whatever that is. But you see, they had none, so they couldn't give it to me. And today I understand that, and I didn't understand what was going on before. And I'm really grateful for the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm grateful for the steps, because that's how we learn these things. This is how we learn to do this. At any rate, I took a drink of alcohol. And it seemed like when I took a drink of alcohol, I could sort of nod in the right places. I could, excuse me. And I just didn't feel so stupid. And for a long time, alcohol worked for me. And believe me, alcohol, to be drunk and disorderly as an officer's wife, was not appropriate behavior. So what I did is I did most of my drinking at home. Now, in 1962, we're stationed in a place way up in the top of Maine. It was Loring Air Force Base, Maine. I have these two children. I don't have a clue how to be a parent. And these two little boys are driving me crazy. And so I go to an Air Force doctor. I'm having a nervous breakdown every 20 minutes. I can't send these kids out to play. They're driving me nuts. And this doctor says, take these. And from 1962 until 1977, when I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I drank alcohol, and I took Librium and Valium and Seconal and Nembutal. And I'm here to tell you, if you take those kind of drugs and drink, you're not an active alcoholic. I call myself a couch potato alcoholic because I did my dying on my living room sofa. I just laid there and watched soap operas and listened to Joan Baez sing the blues. Now, I have a son who's sober in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I've had the opportunity to hear my son talk. He doesn't talk about his mother being a couch potato alcoholic, and he doesn't find it amusing at all. What he talks about is being a little boy, and a little boy who's gripped with terror. And that little boy walks back and forth in front of the sofa because he's certain his mother is dead and his father is gone. That's the disease of alcoholism. The disease of alcoholism absolutely traumatizes our children. And I'm so grateful today for a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, because I got sober in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I got sober in Texas. And I ended up, well, let me just tell you how I ended up. I ended up having a car wreck, sent to a treatment center, left that treatment center. I fell in love in treatment too, Susie. I mean, what else do you do but fall in love in treatment? Walk off, have these jitter house romances. And we stayed sober 58 days, and I was brought back into that treatment center more dead than alive. And I had reached that place in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that talks about pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization, because I had been beaten up and numerous other things in that treatment center. And I knew that in that motel, and I knew that there was no way that I could stay sober. And on that tape I was telling you about of Clancy's, Clancy talks about the disease of alcoholism. I'm here to tell you that alcohol is not my problem. The disease of alcoholism is my problem. And if you're new here today, if drinking were my problem, then treatment centers would send out well people. All I'd have to do is go to a detox center. I haven't had any alcohol or any of them funny tablets for nearly 23 years. And I got alcoholism real bad. I need to suit up and show up to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, because without you, my perception of reality is distorted. And the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous tells me that the disease rests in the mind. And if I don't come to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and treat my mind, I'm going to relapse. Because, I relapse a long time before I take that drink. Because the disease rests in the mind. It's the thinking. And I've watched it time and time and time again. People walk out of the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and say, I got it. I got it. But the disease of alcoholism is very patient. Very patient. And we just get a daily reprieve contingent on my spiritual condition for that day. And I learned when I got sober in Texas that I don't get to live today's sobriety on yesterday's recovery. I got to do it today. I've got to do it today. At any rate, I knew that I couldn't stay sober. I couldn't stand the kind of mom I'd become, the kind of wife I'd become, the kind of daughter I'd become. And I've heard in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that men hate what they've done, but women hate what they have become. And I hated what I had become. And I left that treatment center, and I got a bottle of Valium, and I got a bottle of scotch, and I checked into a motel. That was on Friday, Good Friday of that year. It was April the 8th. That was Good Friday of the year 1977. And on Good Friday, I was pronounced dead on arrival in a hospital in Bedford, Texas. And needless to say, that didn't take, because I'm standing here today. But Easter's not till, I think, like around the 23rd or something this year. But that year, that was Easter weekend. And I always think about that when it's my sobriety day. It's very important that it was Easter. And I remember, and I think this applies to all of us, and Father Leo says that there couldn't be a resurrection if there hadn't first been a persecution. And what we do is we persecute ourselves. And then we come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous uses the word, we are reborn. We are reborn through the steps and the traditions of Alcoholics Anonymous as we enter a new life. And you know, when I came to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm here to tell you, newcomer, I don't want to run you out of here, but you don't have to change much, just everything. Everything. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that I need to get rid of all my old ideas. And my first AA sponsor says, what is it, Polly, about all you don't understand? At any rate, I ended up in a treatment center in Dallas, Texas on April the 11th of 1977. And by God's grace, in a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, I haven't had a drink since. In A Vision for You, it says that if we remain spiritually fit, or keep ourselves spiritually fit, I forget exactly the total wording, great events will come to pass. That's the great fact for us all. And I'd like to spend the next 25 minutes telling you about the great events that have come to pass. I am so grateful. I got 12-stepped out of that motel in Euless, Texas. And that man who 12-stepped me became my first AA sponsor. And I always loved the icebreaker meeting, because there's a meeting in Los Alamitos called Icebreakers. And that meeting was started because of my first AA sponsor. Frank Honeycutt started that meeting because Frank Fitzpatrick was a captain and a Monsignor priest in the Navy and needed to attend meetings that were totally anonymous. And that meeting was started because of him. And I often say that Frank healed me mind, body, and soul, because Frank was an ex-priest. At that time, he was no longer a priest. He had left the priesthood to marry a Taiwanian woman. But he helped me with all the stuff that I felt like I didn't understand about religion, and the anger I had behind the church, and the fear that I had of God. And he helped my soul. And Frank was a psychologist, and he helped my mind. And Frank was a roffer, and he helped my body. And I just say that he healed me mind, body, and soul. And I'm so grateful, because you see, I think God gives us exactly what we need when we come to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And Frank gave me what I needed. And fortunately, Frank was not interested in hurting my feelings. He was very interested in helping save my life. And I'm so grateful for that. And I had been in a 5-step treatment center, and when I left that treatment center, I had already done my 5th step. I had not done it like the big book says, and I did that again when I was 5 years sober, because I just wasn't having the spiritual awakening that I felt like you were having. And I did another 5th step, and instead of doing the Hazelton thing that I'd done in treatment, which is, you know, I was born and you write out your life story, I did the 4 columns and got to see my part in it. And I'm really grateful for that, because you see, unless I can see my part in it, I'm stuck. I'm absolutely stuck. I must own my part. I must own that, or else I'm doomed. And but at any rate, I had done my 5th step, and so Frank and I began to work on the other steps after I got out of treatment. And When we got to the 8th and 9th step, I had my children on the 8th step. And he says, Polly, I want you to go home tonight. And I want you to look at yourself in the mirror. And I want you to tell yourself that you're a child abuser. And I want you to know that you have abused those children. You have abused them mentally, spiritually, and physically. And you need to make amends to those children. And you need to go to those boys and you need to tell them how sorry you are that you have hurt them and how sorry you are for what the disease of alcoholism has done to their lives. And you don't get to say anything when they tell you what they want to tell you about what it was like to have you for a mother. The only thing that you get to say is I'm so sorry that happened to you. You don't get to say you shouldn't feel that way. I'm sober today. And I'm so grateful because, you see, I didn't think I could do that. But Frank says, you know, we have a prayer around here, and it's called the Serenity Prayer. And he says so many times we're willing to go accept the things we can't change, or else just cop out and think we can't change it. But we fail to take the courage to change the things we can. And that day, he says, you need to find the courage, and you need to pray about the courage to change the things you can. And I will be forever grateful because of doing that act that I had just knew it wouldn't work and that nothing good would come from it. I have a relationship today with my sons that is beyond anything I could ever tell you. And I just want to reiterate that because my son James, I have a sober son, and he was here this past week. And James was 16 years sober on the 3rd of January. And he and his wife and 3 kids were here, and Kelly's also a member of this fellowship. And I do a lot of babysitting when they're here, so they can go. In fact, I didn't make it to my home group last Monday night because they went, so I kept the kids. But I do a lot of babysitting, and in August, I'm going to keep those 3 kids while my children go and have a 5-day vacation, so they can have a vacation without the children. And anyway, my son called me on the phone. He was going to work out at the gym yesterday morning before they left. They left yesterday to go back to Chicago. And James called me from the car, and he says, Mom, I just want to tell you that you are the best grandmother I have ever seen. You are so good with those kids, and there's just no way I could leave those kids with anybody but you. And I said, well, James, maybe it's just me paying back a little restitution. And he said, oh, Mom, you paid that back a long time ago. And I'm so grateful for this program because that's a child that I had abused, and he's telling me that he doesn't want to leave his kids with anybody but me. You know, that's a great event that's come to pass, and that's only because of a program called Alcoholics Anonymous. When I was 3 years sober, I married another member of this fellowship, and Bob just came up and said, we're filling out birthday cards for you and Dave, because Dave will be 24 years sober on the 18th of April. He is 51 weeks more sober than me. And Dave and I had been friends since I was 6 months sober and since he was a year and a half sober. And when I was 3.5 years sober and him 4.5 years sober, we got married. And Dave and I often say, if we'd have known we were going to get married, we'd have never told each other the things we told each other. Because we were just AA buds, that's all. And but I married my best friend. And Dave and I have had a wonderful, wonderful marriage. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people that have as good a marriage as me, but I don't think there's many people that have a better marriage than me. And I am more in love with my husband today than I was almost 20 years ago. And, you know, that's something, because this is 2 alcoholics that hooked up together. And, you know, what an order. I can't go through with it. But we got a lot of good advice. And Frank said that if you want to love each other all the days of your life, treat each other like a newcomer. And how do we treat newcomers? With love, patience, and tolerance. And Frank told us, plant yourself firmly in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and nurture yourself with the steps and the traditions. And then you'll grow just like 2 oak trees if you plant yourself like 2 oak trees. And if you, in years later, if you looked up at those 2 oak trees, you wouldn't be able to tell where one begins and the other one ends. And he says, if you do that in AA, that'll be you and Dave. And Dave and I are both committed to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. It is absolutely the foundation of our relationship. And there is nothing that does not come before Alcoholics Anonymous in our life. We have never lost that priority. And I'm so grateful for that. We know that. That without Alcoholics Anonymous, we would not have this life. And I was just telling Susie how sad it is that we watch people leave the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous because of the good life Alcoholics Anonymous gave them. And Alcoholics Anonymous has given us a wonderful life. And Dave and I have, we've not had it a rose garden. In fact, ours is kind of like a riches to rags story. When my husband was 57 years old, he lost his job. And when the bottom fell out of aerospace, Dave's a computer scientist, the bottom fell out of our lives. And Dave didn't work for almost 2 years, except he had 2 jobs that were minimum wage jobs. And he's a computer scientist. And we ended up losing our home, and we ended up having to file bankruptcy and to do some really shameful things. And I was really angry at God. How dare you let this happen to me? Don't you see how many people I sponsor? Don't you see how much service I am in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous? Other words, somehow thinking I need to be rewarded for this good life I've been given. But the deal is, the only thing I lost was a lot of pride. Because you see, I didn't want you to know that our house got foreclosed on. And I didn't want you to know that we had to file bankruptcy. I was so embarrassed. But you see, we got an old man down in Long Beach, and Susie talked about Frank Honeycutt. And I can hear Frank's words, and he says, it is absolutely none of my business what you think of me. But my very life depends on what I think of you. And you see, what I got to learn was, the only thing that was really eating my lunch is that I was just embarrassed about what you would think of me. But my deal is just to do whatever life gives you. You pick it up, you do the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and don't drink and don't die. And you get to keep on doing the deal. And I learned a lot. Dave and I said we learned different things, but I was always addicted to approval. And I got to find out that you can just live through it, no matter what people think of you or what you think they think of you. And that's mostly what it is, what you think they think of you. And today Dave was working, and life is so good. And I'll give you one example. It's like I love my life. I love the life I have today. I love my life. And that's why I'm so busy in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's why I sponsor people. And let me tell you, I am a real sick cookie. I am one of these people left to my own devices. I would be so depressed. I would be curled up in the fetal position in my bed, unable to get out of it. That's normal for me. Depression is normal for me. Not to be depressed and to take these actions are taking actions contrary to the way I feel. And nobody has asked me how I feel. They just say, what actions are you taking? And if I take these contrary actions, those actions will change my thinking, and my thinking will change my feelings. And that's what I learned here. Because I am normally depressed. And I picked up a book in 1987 called The Language of the Heart. And it's AA-approved literature. And it's the writings of Bill W. That he wrote to the Grapevine. And in there he talks about emotional sobriety, our next frontier. And he talks about his own depression. And I understood that. And he talked about that deep, dark place that we go to if you're a person that experiences that. And he says, when it's all said and done, the only thing that I find out that really ever worked is to work with another alcoholic. And you see, I need all those women. They don't need me. I need them. Because you see, left to my head is a really bad place for me to go. But if I am busy in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, then I am able to be relieved of the bondage of self. Because it's that bondage of self that takes me to that really, really dark place that I don't want to go. My 2 sons have suffered tremendously because of my disease of alcoholism. And my oldest son is probably the most like me. And Russ has suffered a lot of depression. Very,
very chronic depression. He's a kid that's got a lot of tics, and he makes a sound in his throat, and he's just always got something going on, and he is just a very tormented man. And I'm just grateful that he does as well as he does today. I'm just so grateful for that. And Russ is not an alcoholic. Sometimes I wish he were. But, I've always said Russ needed the rooms of Al-Anon, and Russ had married a Catholic girl, and they've been married 12 years, and this past year Russ became a Catholic. So he found his way. Wasn't the way I'd planned, but he found his way. But this son had tried to take his life 6 times. And I thought I was going to die in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous behind this kid. And I would go to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I would just be so devastated. And I'd come in there, and I'd say, oh, my God, what am I going to do? This kid, yada, yada, yada. And, people in AA would be telling me, turn it over, turn it over, turn it over. And I don't know if any of you have been in a meeting and have gotten really frustrated. Maybe you haven't, but I did. And I jumped up when it was my turn to share, and I said, would you kindly tell me how to do that? And I found out they didn't know, so I went to the rooms of Al-Anon. They know. So by God's grace, I have been a member of the rooms of Al-Anon for the past 17 years. And for that, I am eternally grateful. I often say that James sent me to Al-Anon, and Russ keeps me there. So, but I look at this kid, and this kid hasn't tried to hurt himself in 8 years. And that's a great event that's come to pass. 10 years. I take that back. It's 10 years that Russ hasn't tried to hurt himself. And Russ has got 2 little girls, Katie and Jessie, and I babysat them this morning. I'm the babysitter on Thursday night and Sunday morning because both of them, my daughter-in-law is the music director of a Catholic church, and my son sings in the choir. And so Grandma gets to babysit. And the little girls were sick today, so I went to their house. And I got there, and Katie, she just holds her arms up, and she says, oh, Grandma, I'm going to be so much better now that you're here. And, of course, it's just, it just doesn't get any better than that. And both of them are sick, so we sit on the sofa, and we just kind of cuddle, and we watch Tarzan for the 999th time. And I said, oh, Katie, let's please watch Pinocchio. Oh, no, how about Tarzan, she says. But it's a gift. It's a gift, an absolute gift. My youngest son called me on the phone when I was 6.5 years sober, and he says, Mom, I want what you have. And 6.5 years before, I was supposed to attend a function at his school. And he says, don't you dare show up at my school because I am ashamed of you. And 6.5 years later, he wants what I have. And that's a great event that's come to pass. And James and Kelly are really active. And not as, I'm going to just say they're not as active in Alcoholics Anonymous as they used to be. Kelly still goes to a meeting every day. She goes to a meeting every morning. James can only make 3 meetings a week. But what I try to tell the kids is my son will say, oh, Mom, I just don't think I do enough in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, James, that's not your job today. Your job is to go to meetings, sponsor the guys that you sponsor, but you've got a big responsibility. You've got 3 kids, and they're precious cargo. And today, thanks to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, you can be a really, really good dad. So if you've got small kids, I just highly encourage you to be home and to find ways to go to meetings that does not take away from you being a parent, because it's a really big job. And not most of us, we don't get parenting 101. But it's just really important that you be a present parent. And I want to tell you about James's kids. On May the 23rd, 1993, I thought the heavens had opened up and we had an angel. And he is an angel. He's our first grandchild, and his name is Ryan David Klinger-Lee. And when Ryan was 18 months old, we got some devastating news. We found out that Ryan was profoundly deaf, and I had my fist at God. How can this be happening to us? But you see, one more time, my perception of reality was distorted. I had no idea what God was going to give us. Because you see, I don't know if you know how many deaf people are in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you see, because of this little boy, and because we loved him, our family went to school and we learned to sign. And because there's no negatives in God's world, it's just my perception that's negative. I've had the opportunity to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous to quite a few deaf women. And for that, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I've had this opportunity. And you see, I never knew that that would happen. I only did that so I could talk to my grandson. But you see, God takes everything and makes it wonderful. And I wish you could see the kind of parents that James and Kelly are. I wish you could see what you've done for them. Because you see, when you have a child that has special needs, it takes a lot. But for James and Kelly, it's never too much. It never costs too much. It's just never too much. They've always got the time, and they've always got the patience to deal with this little child. Great events come to pass. And we have Chris. And when Kelly was pregnant with Chris, they wanted to run a test on her to find out if there was anything wrong with the child she carried, because she was carrying because she'd had a child with a birth defect. And what they found out is that Kelly was in the late stages of aborting the child she carried. So what they did is they did a cerclage on her and put her to bed for 5 months. So you can't tell anybody in our family that if it hadn't been for Ryan's deafness, we wouldn't have Chris. Because if it hadn't been that Ryan was deaf, Kelly would have never had that test. So Ryan saved his brother's life. And you see, God has always been doing these things in my life. God has always performed these miracles. But it hasn't been until the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that I could see it. I couldn't see it before, that God has done this. And then, a year ago, January, Kelly gave birth to a little girl named Maddie. And we know that's the caboose of that family. We don't know if we got a caboose on the other family, but we got a caboose on that family. And it's just precious. And it's a recovering family. It's people who are grateful to the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous because of the gifts that Alcoholics Anonymous has given them. And we become a recovering family. And I'm so grateful to this program. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to own it. And it hasn't been easy to try to be the best we can be. But one of the things that I was taught, and I can hear Dottie's words, just do the right thing. If you'll just do the right thing. I want to tell you a little story. First, I want to preach a minute. And I'm going to tell you a little story. One of the things that I really have a hard time with is people who want to change AA. And I just want AA to be the way it was when I got here 23 years ago, the way it was when James got here 16 years ago, because I think my grandson Ryan's going to need you. I also think to be sober in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous is a responsibility. You know, you may be the only big book anybody ever reads. And I was told that about my son James. I was told that I might be the only big book he ever reads. So if you don't think being a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous means that you make a difference. So if nobody's told you today you make a difference, let me tell you. Because you see, your behavior and my behavior is so important. I've got a little round circle on my car with a triangle in it. And, you know, if I drive down an LA freeway flipping people off, I don't think that's a good example of being an alcoholic. And I can tell the women I sponsor, I have the opportunity to travel a lot. And I say, you don't have to worry about how I behave as a married woman in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I can tell that to my group, that I will behave in a principled manner. The book asks me to be principled in all my actions. And one of the things that I've learned is that as the road gets narrower, and it's not that I haven't done all those things. I hit a bottom that was far worse than the bottom I'd hit behind alcohol and drugs, and that was behind relationships and sex, just because I felt like if you just loved me enough, I'd be okay. And today I know that it's all about how I behave and to pick up those values and be God's kid and act like God's kid, because this is a spiritual walk towards God. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says that I am to be of maximum service to God and those about me. That's all I'm supposed to do. That's my purpose, to stay sober and help other people. I want to tell you a little story about Ryan. when we were looking to find out the degree of Ryan's deafness, we had to take Ryan and run some tests on him, but we had to put him to sleep. And so they gave him the medication and nothing happened. And they gave him the medication again and nothing happened. And the third time they gave him the medication and he went to sleep. And when he came to, he was doing this. That's mower in sign language. Treasure this program as if your very life depends on it, because it does. And the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says, left to my own devices, I'll self-destruct. The very best I could do for me is to get me pronounced dead on arrival. Thanks to a program called Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm the woman I've always wanted to be. And I guarantee you that I don't always feel self-worth and all that stuff. I don't know how many years sobriety that takes. 23, ain't it? But I know that it's better than it used to be. And today I'm self-supporting. I'm not self-employed. I am self-supporting through my own contribution. And I just always thought it was money, men, and mansions. And guess what? I get to be self-supporting. And I know about commitment. I know about friendships, because you've taught me how to do that in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. But the place I'd always felt like such a failure was that as a mom. And a few years ago, my sons told me, Mom, you're the mom we always wanted you to be. And my son called today to say they got home and said, well, what's going on? What are you guys up to? And I said, well, Susie and I are going to go down to Paramount, and I'm going to talk at their meeting. And James says, well, Mom, you be sure and tell all those people in Paramount that your son James loves you. And that's a great event that's come to pass. God bless. I love you too.